field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Mattingly. Time waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Table Setters covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve. Join my tag partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up? What's up? Welcome back here. Killing these division previews. Thank you guys for listening. If you've been loyal to the show and you've listened to each one, this is the final division preview here. If you're going in order, the American League East, and then obviously very soon afterwards, we will get to our kind of final full season preview a few days before the Netflix premiere of opening night with the Yankees and the Giants. So the American League East, man, maybe I guess you could say this about a few different divisions, but I think a lot of people would say maybe the most difficult division to try to predict because it is absolutely loaded.
Yeah, one of the more demanding environments in all of baseball, for sure. Expectations for every team coming in, for the most part, is relentless. And I think most fan bases in this division are looking for a contender. And even the stronger teams at the top, there are still conversations inwardly about how we can make our team better. And we're looking at the AL East as always being one of those compression type of situations where it's always going to bunch up at the end. And I'm really curious how this pans out, especially with the growth we've seen from the Boston Red Sox. Of course, Tampa Bay Rays are always going to be relentless. The Yankees in their approach for this offseason. And then also we have the AL champions, the Toronto Blue Jays, coming into this year with all the momentum in the world. So we'll see how they're able to go from here and build on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you think of the star power too, like 1 through 5 in the division. It's really cool. Like Aaron Judge in New York, Vladdy in Toronto, Roman Anthony, who I think most people would agree is going to pretty quickly become a star in the face there in Boston, Gunnar Henderson in Baltimore, and Junior Caminero, who, I mean, if you watch the World Baseball Classic, you have to think this guy is on his way to becoming a superstar. So really a healthy division, maybe impossible to predict, but we're going to get into it. And we're going to start with your team that you root for diehard from the time you were a very little kid, night in, night out. We're going to try to put the bias aside here and look at the New York Yankees.
So we head to the Bronx and talk about the Yankees, and they enter this year with the identity that defined them last season. We're going to be leaning heavily on the offense built around the power, of course, and they're taking it. We talked about the Phillies in the NL East episode. They are bringing the band back together, and that's been a lot of the criticism throughout the offseason of the Yankees not being able to do enough to say they're contending. But if you look at 2025, and you've been sort of this person that was talking everybody down from the ledge, they finished first in runs. They finished first in home runs, first in OPS, third in OBP. This is a team that is already currently constructed as an offensive juggernaut. And that combination creates pressure. As we know, there's high expectations going into this year. And it all centers around Aaron Judge. And of course, WBC didn't go the way that Team USA wanted, didn't go the way that Aaron Judge wanted. He is the centerpiece of this team. If you want to win a World Series, he's going to have to go. Coming off of another MVP year, the level of production we're seeing from him is really the difference of making this team a championship contender. And looking at the structure throughout the order, we're bringing Trent Grisham back, of course. Cody Bellinger's coming back in this lineup, and that was a big conversation about where would he go. Let's not forget, I understand he was a Yankee last year, but that is still an acquisition they made this year. Ben Rice taking the next jump. Jazz Chisholm Jr. adding some athleticism, playing a natural position. Austin Wells also continues to provide value behind the plate. Honorary member of the Dominican Republic with all the vibes he's bringing over here. Joking aside, top to bottom, this is a lineup without any easy landing spots. And even with the expected regression, because I think some of that will be there for the Trent Grishams of the world, you look about the approach from this team. They're patient. They walk a lot. They hit a lot of home runs. And the depth for sure is going to keep them among the league's best offenses. Now, the real conversation is going to really circle around the rotation, of course, because earlier in the year, it's going to be incomplete because Max Fried is going to anchor the staff to start the year. But you have some conversations about the next step for Cam Schlittler. During camp, they've been talking about limiting some of the innings and some of the pitches for him earlier in the year, Will Warren, of course, veteran guy. Ryan Weathers coming in. Luis Heel not pitching well in the spring. This group right now, as currently constructed, lacks that top end dominance, but reinforcements are coming because when healthy, the Yankees are going to add Garrett Cole back, returning from Tommy John surgery. We see him pitching in spring training. The velocity was up. Feels like he's moving around okay. He's expected back by late April, early May, by all accounts, maybe sometime later. And then you got to remember, Carlos Rodon's coming back. He's coming off surgery. He's targeting a similar timeline. So at full strength, you can look at Fried, Cole, and Rodon and make this rotation look a lot different. So obviously that brings me to my weakness side of things, where without Cole, Rodon, and also let's not forget Clark Schmidt is also hurt as well. The Yankees are relying heavily on some mid-rotation arms and guys with a little bit of a back-end type of profile that you're not really comfortable leaning on for a full 162. That puts some pressure on the bullpen, which is reconstructed, and we saw what they did at the trade deadline last year. David Bednar, who's a guy stabilizing the ninth inning, hopefully. He puts himself in precarious positions. There's no doubt about it. We saw him do the same thing in the WBC. Pitches his best when his back is against the wall, it seems. Camilo Doval, Fernando Cruz being back here. Middle relief options are going to be like guys like Tim Hill, of course, Jake Bird, Ryan Yarbrough are going to be coming in. They're not dominant guys, but those are names you're familiar with. And the group does have some strikeout upside, but there is some volatility late in games. There's no doubt about it. And for me, there's also the conversation where, like I said, waiting for Garrett Cole to come back, waiting for Rodon to come back. Defensively, they're going to take a little bit of a step back because the early absence of Anthony Volpe. I understand people are down on Volpe and his offense, his shoulder surgery. The fact that we're going to have Jose Caballero taking shortstop and playing big innings for them, their defense gets worse without Volpe. He is the kicking man for everybody. Everyone's down on him, but it does weaken the infield as far as defensively goes, and it removes a key stabilizer at shortstop. So I'm waiting for him to come back, looking for them. They were roughly league average across most metrics last year defensively. They were landing in the 13th and 19th range in most of the categories. So they need to be better defensively, especially with this pitching staff earlier in the year, which again brings me to my X factor. And he's a guy that maybe we didn't know going into this year. Of course, if you follow the Yankees very closely, you're familiar with names in their system, but Carlos Agranje is a guy making a name for himself. I saw you put in on Twitter the conversation. All these Yankee fans are getting very hot and bothered. I think they're nicknaming him ZZ Top here. But we don't want to get too high on ourselves because, as you mentioned in the tweet, very aptly put, he hasn't been above the AA level. So let's see what he can do in AAA. But there is some early season variable with him where maybe they want to take the jump and have him come up, catch lightning in a bottle and bring him up. The elite raw stuff, it's undeniable. The fastball that touches 100, we saw him reach 103 at some point. I mean, there's a high strikeout upside. The Yankees do need innings, but I would caution all the optimism of letting this player develop because he feels like he could be a very important piece to what they're doing. Finishing up here, I think for the season outlook, we're going to have to look at them through phases. I think from April through May, the offense is going to have to carry the team. The pitching obviously needs to get healthy. June through July, you're going to get Cole and Rodon back. The rotation is going to change a little bit. Maybe you can reduce the pressure on the offense. And in the second half, I think this roster is going to be fully functioning. And maybe you make some moves at the deadline to further bolster this team and go forward. And they have a legitimate case to win the division. I know they fell short last year and they lost to the Blue Jays in an embarrassing fashion, but there's no reason to believe that this team that's easily basement level, top 5 offense, if things go right, this is a team that absolutely can win this division. And can really, I understand Yankee fans are down on them, but they can compete for a World Series when it's all said and done.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, which is why, like you said, like all offseason, I've kind of been someone talking people off the ledge as far as like, I understand it can be frustrating when you get eliminated earlier than you want to, and then you kind of just bring everybody back. And that's the same squad that disappointed you. But there's reasons that is what they went with. I mean, the team was really, really good last year offensively, like leading in so many departments, right? Home runs. You could go through a lot of the list, and the Yankees are at the top. So I think that offense is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, Judge is, Aaron Judge getting a lot of heat today for not coming through in the clutch, right? And it's very easy to kind of kick people when they're down, but at least regular season, man, you know what you're going to get with this guy. Just elite production. I think if you're a Yankee fan, you're starting to get worried that Aaron Judge's prime years are going to be wasted here. You got to one World Series. It didn't go well, and it ended in also kind of embarrassing fashion. And here's the thing, man. Like this team, although you didn't really bring in new blood or very much of it, is a really, really good team. And they're in a loaded division. So I think almost tinkering with it too much could have had the opposite result of like, oh, now we might have actually taken a step back. And this is not a division you can afford to do that in. So offensively, I mean, Ben Rice is another guy, like based on the metrics, you might see Ben Rice come out and have an absolute all-star type of year. I saw someone in a bold prediction say, like, we might see Ben Rice in MVP voting this year. I don't know if I'd go that far, but like he may be a star in waiting based on some of the numbers you look at behind the scenes. So, I mean, Giancarlo Stanton, as always, it's kind of a matter of how many games is he going to play. We know what he's going to do with the bat. He's still an elite power hitter. But yeah, offensively, I think they're set. The questions are more like glutton than anything else. Like, all right, Spencer Jones, Jason Dominguez, how do they factor in here? Or when do they factor in? On the bench, when I look at the bench, I wish they looked for some youth for the bench. Like they brought Paul Goldschmidt back. I know he's close with Aaron Judge. I know he mashes lefties still. I would have loved to see them fill that bench spot in a different way. So, like, if I'm looking for something to complain about, it'd be that. And he might go out and do exactly what he's supposed to do, which is mash left-handed pitching. He very well could do that. Probably will. But, like, I go back, and this is retrospect, which is very easy. But in retrospect, I bet a lot of Yankee fans would be like, man, I wish we could have held on to Caleb Durbin instead of going and swapping him for Devin Williams, who didn't work out. And now you got Devin Williams playing for the Mets. You got Caleb Durbin, who now somehow ends up in the Red Sox uniform against them. Man, what a Durbin profile here on the bench for the Yankees would be the perfect, like, that's the kind of guy I'm talking about. And Jose Caballero is kind of that guy in a veteran form, but now he's in a starting position, at least until Volpe's back. And Caballero is more of a guy that you'd really like to use in like a utility setting, move him around. He's going to steal lots of bases. I like him as a player a lot. And honestly, is he that? I'm asking you honestly because I guess I don't know. Is he that bad defensively at shortstop that it's that much of a drop down? Because Volpe was terrible last year. So when you said that, it kind of surprised me.
I just think everyone's looking. The defensive lapse we saw from Volpe, I believe, has to do with the shoulder injury. If you look at all his run through the minor leagues and eventually his first year, defensive metrics were all in favor of Anthony Volpe being a strong player. So I'm assuming that we're going to get the defensive wizard that was Anthony Volpe before he got hurt. Because again, I agree with you. When he wasn't right, he wasn't right. And he had the yips, it seemed, wasn't able to make the throw to first, all of that. And I guess you can't take that for granted, but I do believe he's more of the player. Because if you look at before last year, everyone was very high on his defense. As far as Caballero goes, I don't think he's that much worse than where Volpe was at some points last year, but I think Volpe at his best, the ceiling for Volpe is way higher than Caballero as far as defensive goes.
Okay, that makes more sense now. I was just curious. And then, I mean, looking at the pitching staff, I know you feel like there's questions until Cole and Rodon get back, but I still like it, man. I mean, Max Fried, again, a veteran that, unless he has a severe drop-off suddenly, for the most part, you feel like you know what you're going to get from Max Fried. I am so excited about Cam Schlittler. That guy looks like a future ace of the staff. So that's the guy I'm probably most excited about. Will Warren has kind of, from what I've seen in spring training, made some positive steps. Last year, he was a guy where it's like, all right, he might be able to go out there and strike out 10, but he also might be a guy that goes out there and gets really hit around or walks the ballpark. I think his stock is moving up too. The Luis Gil stuff is interesting, and I think that's his struggles are maybe why some Yankee fans are looking at Carlos Lagrange, and it's kind of like the oldest meme in the book, right? Where the guy's walking with his girlfriend and he's looking back at the girl behind him. I think that's how Yankee fans, I mean, Luis Gil was just a rookie of the year, a couple years ago, and now they're kind of, holding his hand still, but looking back at Carlos Lagrange walking away, and Luis Gil's a little upset. But like I said, I don't know if we see hitters make the jump from AA straight to the majors sometimes. I don't know if organizations see that as a great idea for pitchers. I know it's been done before by some people, but I would think the Yankees are going to be careful there and send them at the very least to AAA and go continue to prove it. But I like the squad, man. I think in the bullpen, Jake Bird, a little bit of an X factor. They acquired him near the deadline and then basically barely ever saw him again. I think the Rockies overused him. So he was good for the Rockies, and it seemed like a good acquisition, and it looked like he just kind of hit a wall. So we'll see if the Yankees can get the best out of him. The bullpen's weird. I agree with you there. Like Fernando Cruz, Camilo Doval, and David Bednar could be an electric 7, 8, 9. But Fernando Cruz, as nasty as his stuff is, we know the wheels can fall off sometimes. And Camilo Doval, even more so, nasty, but the wheels can really fall off. And Bednar went through a stretch as a Pirate before last year where he looked like he lost it. He's found it again, but you worry that that's in his profile too. The rest of the bullpen, Tim Hill's reliable. Jake Bird, I just talked about. Is Paul Blackburn going to be out there? Like, is that, I don't know what he's not really a bullpen guy. He's usually a mediocre starter, but they don't need him there. So listen, they have reinforcements coming at some point. I love the team. I really do. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I look at it and I'm very, very bullish on what I see. I think the biggest question is in the big moments when they get to it, are they going to be able to come through? Because they have failed in that department 2 years straight in different ways. And it is led, like Aaron Judge is the guy that needs to break through in that department. And when push comes to shove in a playoff series and it's close and back and forth, he needs to carry that team over the finish line and get them to the next phase.
Yeah, and I think a big conversation about this team, and you don't want to take any games for granted, but I think they're looking long picture towards the postseason. And nothing's guaranteed at all. But as we said, this slow ramp up of April and May and making sure everyone's good, that kind of fits the conversation with LeGrand and making sure all the pieces are in place. Cam Schlittler, maybe the conversations around him during spring training with the limitations he'll have as far as pitch count and innings pitch, maybe that's more to save him from the expectations that were super high coming out of the postseason last year. But I am excited for him as well. I think he's going to, I know when the postseason ended last year, everyone's saying he could be a Cy Young contender. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's still development as far as his performance against the Red Sox. We'll always remember that. But again, this is a league that adapts. This is a lot of coaching staffs and scouting reports that are developed. And let's be honest, the Red Sox, they were studying big time on Schlittler, and we're going to see how he adjusts and gets back to where he was. I have faith. The stuff is electric, and he could be a top end ace. And imagine you get Cole back, Hall of Fame trajectory. If you're able to get even 85% of what Cole's been in the past, and add on top of that with this rotation, pie in the sky utopia type of conversation to have in Yankee land.
Yeah, and just to finish up, one more guy we didn't really mention very much, and then we'll head over to Baltimore. I think we're going to go to next. But Jazz Chisholm is an interesting thought this year. I believe last year of his contract, kind of a lame duck. He has stated like he's looking for a big deal. Like he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to take a discount to stay in pinstripes. There were even some trade rumors about him as well. Don't know how legit they were. We never really do. He has performed really, really well. If you look at the numbers while he's been a Yankee, really, really well. And there is some health every once in a while. It feels like Jazz kind of can't stay on the field in a Marlin uniform or Yankee uniform. But when he's been out there for the Yankees, he has been a star. Really, really good. I would worry a little bit. I feel like if the conversation he wants to happen is not happening at all, as far as contract long-term goes, I'd worry a little bit that he could become a little bit of an unhappy camper. And I feel like Jazz Chisholm, the unhappy camper, is not a great guy to have on your team. I'd worry a little bit about that. That's me pontificating a little bit. Like, I don't know if there's any truth to that. It's just a thought. That's how it comes off to me. And I'm interested, like not many people are talking about that. Like, this is Jazz Chisholm's last year. I haven't heard a lot of interest on the Yankees' part, even though he's performed very well for them.
Absolutely. I mean, for the Yankees, I think the biggest question is what we've been saying about all these teams in the previews. They must stay healthy, and they need to figure out a way, their path of being able to be competitive when the going gets tough. And for the Yankees to have the adversity that they saw last year and to be able to overcome, everyone's going to look at the end of being where they were and they lost to the Blue Jays. And like I said before, embarrassing fashion, but there was a lot to like for what the Yankees did and overcome last year. You are the Death Star. You're the New York Yankees, the evil empire. You'll always have that moniker, but they overcame a lot to be where they were last year. And they were very, very good. So can they be great in 2026? We shall see.
So let's head over to Baltimore, to another team that is trying to get back to being great. It wasn't that long ago that they were, 100-win team one season, playoff team 2 years in a row. Playoffs didn't go well for them. And then last year, things just kind of fell off a cliff for the Baltimore Orioles. But the offseason, very, very notable. At certain points of the offseason, Steve and I were talking about, like, did the Orioles win the offseason? Obviously, a lot more happened after that where the conversation changed, but they're one of the winners. I think we could say that. So let's start with the obvious. They added a bunch of pop to a team that, in my mind, already had pop. And I know some Baltimore fans would push back on that because the highest home run total of any player last year was 17, Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg. Let's be honest, a lot of dudes underperformed. I think some guys were maybe dealing with injury that we didn't know about at the time. But even in a lot of down years, they finished 11th in the majors in home run total as a team. So, like, that's in a really down year. They finished 11th, like more than top half of the league. So Gunnar did not have a good power year. He's capable of getting 30 himself, in my opinion, at 17. Multiple players underperformed, as I said. Now you're adding Pete Alonso and his 38 home runs from last year, which was 8th in the league. Taylor Ward, 36 home runs, 10th in the league. You're adding those two guys to a team and a roster full of guys that do have pop, whether they showed it last year or not. That's exciting. I feel like this team has the potential to kind of play and hang around with the teams like the Yankees and Dodgers, who are at the top of the home run list. I really do think they have that potential. The bench is deep because of these acquisitions. A guy like Ryan Mountcastle is more of a bench piece. Jeremiah Jackson, who was starting a lot of games for them at the end of the year last year. Dylan Beavers, who has looked good in his own right. Leody Taveras, who's been a starter in this league at times. All those guys have shown the ability to be starters at some point, so whether it was with the Orioles or somewhere else. So the bench is deep. The offense, man, you have to be bullish on the offense. Jackson Holliday and Jordan Westburg will start in the IL. I think they'll get Holliday back before they get Westburg back. And obviously with Westburg, injuries are unfortunately a huge part of his story. A super talented player when he's on the field. Even without those two for a little while, team still looks really, really formidable. Excited to see a full year of Samuel Basallo. Obviously, this guy hits titanic shots when he gets a hold of them. Hitting 310 in the spring so far. I think what you'd like to see from him is maybe try to decrease the K rate a little bit. Pretty common for younger players. 27% K rate in spring, but also a 12% walk rate. So he's walking at a nice clip too. And that kind of counteracts that K rate to a degree. Just so many bounce back candidates on this team. We talked about Gunnar. Cowser is another guy. Adley Rutschman fell off a cliff last year. You would have to think he'll be better this year. Kobe Mayo. How long have we been talking about Kobe Mayo? He's going to get another shot here. He is tearing it up in spring training, hitting 464. Actually, that number might be up. I got that number early in the day, and I felt like I saw a tweet that said he's one of two guys hitting 500. So the number might be up after today's games. 3 doubles and a homer coming into the day. Maybe we finally see the best version of Kobe Mayo in the majors. We've seen it at AAA. He's going to get an opportunity with Westburg out here. See if he takes advantage of it. If you go to the pitching side, a little more questions here. Likely this is the key to how far they go, how this pitching turns out. Certainly a deeper rotation than they had, but it's really about what will these top 2 guys do. I'm talking about Kyle Bradish. I'm talking about Trevor Rogers. Those 2 hold the keys to this team, in my opinion. Both have looked solid, not spectacular, but solid in spring training. We'll see what we get. Trevor Rogers obviously was unbelievable out of nowhere after we all bashed that trade that sent Stowers and Connor Norby to Miami. Rogers barely put on the Oriole uniform for a little while. Suddenly he's in that rotation dominating. If they get that Trevor Rogers again, completely different conversation. They brought in Shane Baz, gave up a lot to get him. Take him out of that minor league ballpark. Another guy I would say I'm pretty bullish on. Remember, he was a different pitcher on the road last year. I think that ballpark took a toll. This knuckle curve we know as elite stuff plus pitch. I read today he also added a 2-seam fastball. He said he likes being able to throw it against right-handed hitters. So I have more here, but I want to, before I go too far, get your thoughts on those 3 guys I just mentioned, and I'll give you a little more after that. Shane Baz, Kyle Bradish, Trevor Rogers, who I know is one of your fantasy baseball keepers, so I know you're hoping for the best there.
Yeah, I think for them, we look at the way they present. I still think they lack a frontline presence. I think we can get something ace or jace from any of these guys on any given day. But I think you are looking at a collection, and maybe it's too harsh to say mid rotation, but upper mid rotation arms that you look at last year and look at some of the numbers and all that. I mean, the run prevention thing really bothers me for this team. And it kind of pairs with your question with Bradish, Boz, and Rogers. For me, and I look at them, they were 24th in team ERA. And yet last year, there was a lot of issues with the team. Relievers, their bullpen was 25th. They were 21st in whip, 28th in their bullpen, 27th in hits allowed per 9 for starters. And they were bottom third in defensive metrics across all of them, whether it's DRS or OAA or overall fielding value. This is a team that needs to get better in all those areas. And again, I guess you could be the optimist and look at Trevor Rogers' year that he had last year, despite all of those things happening. Maybe he unlocks something to be a true ace. But I do think there's a lot of volatility in this team and a lot of questions to answer from last year. Because I think a lot of people are writing this off of just a down year in a core that's supposed to be competitive. And maybe you fall into the lull of how well built we feel like this team is, but they have to be able to perform on the field and be able to be competitive. And it's going to start and end with the starting pitching. Offense, as you mentioned, they got better. Pete Alonso adds a whole new dynamic to that lineup. You're expecting more from Gunnar this year, taking the next step. But I do think there's very little dominance on the pitching side, and that might be a problem rearing its head for a long season. So I like Rogers. I like Boz. I even like Chris Bassett, Kyle Bradish. I like these guys. But to me, it's more of a conversation of, can they reach a higher level than they've ever reached? And I guess the highest ceiling, you look at a guy like Shane Baz of maybe he can finally put it together. Like you said, they paid a hefty price to grab him.
Yeah, and you kind of started mentioning it. I do, no matter what you think of those top three guys, you can at least point to like the depth here is aided by a Chris Bassett who they brought in, Dean Kramer now, who's been there, but more of depth now. Zach Eflin they brought back, and I know people will tear that apart, but there's more to that story. He has the ability, if he's okay, if the back's okay, if he's healthy, he has the ability to be a very solid piece of that rotation. And then you have guys like Cade Povich and Brandon Young, who they were relying on last year to make a start every fifth day. They become more depth that I'm guessing will be down in AAA until they need him. And I think that might be a more appropriate spot for those two with where they are in their development. You just have to feel a lot better about this group, even with the risky departure of Grayson Rodriguez, because if he goes out there in Anaheim and is the guy that we heard about for years, the Taylor Ward for 1 year deal looks a little not great, especially if the Baltimore pitching isn't, pitching to their ability. But I don't dislike. I don't think I'm quite as skeptical about the pitching as you are. Would I have liked them to add a Fromber at the top or a Ranger Suarez at the top to have something of a more of a sure thing? Yeah. I talked about that, but overall, I think I'm okay with the rotation. On paper, you kind of said what they were last year. The bullpen still reads as the weak link here, the weak spot. Let's remember, bullpens are pretty unpredictable. Out of every piece of the game, the most unpredictable piece. And it could be sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. Sometimes there's guys that you think are stud relievers that go out and get shelled for a year. And then other years, there's guys that come out of nowhere and become bullpen pieces that you never saw coming. Ryan Helsley, they're signing. If he has not truly figured out the issues he had last year in New York for my Mets, Baltimore could be in big, big trouble. They are relying on him here to solidify the back end of that bullpen. So to me, that is the glaring weakness for the Baltimore Orioles. The obvious strength is the offense. The over-under here is another tough number. Vegas just knows how to do this to us. 85.5. So this is interesting, and it'll be even more interesting when I get to my standings. But I am taking the under by a very, very tiny part, and I feel like that's just the betting piece of me that I feel like if I really truly was betting money on this, whether I like the team or not, I think I'd have to take the under. These teams, it's partly the division. These teams in the AL East are going to beat the shit out of each other over the course of 162. You'll see later, even though I'm taking the under, I still think pretty highly of the Orioles. Just a little hint there, but I think I'll give you a little more on them. But I think my X factor is Kyle Bradish, his full-time return. I know he came back last year, but his full-time return from the big injury. We did get a little contribution from our friends at the Verge podcast, which is an Orioles minor league baseball podcast, but they keep a very close eye on the majors as well. Obviously, we had Nick Stevens from that podcast on probably more than a year ago at this point. One of our early guests, actually, I think, but they chimed in here. The Orioles will win the East. This is what they say. If the young core all play to their potential, Gunnar and Colton Cowser rebound after playing through undisclosed at the time significant injuries. Jackson Holliday takes another step forward. Kobe Mayo builds on his hot September and spring, and Basayo starts to tap into his potential. And they finish up by saying, that's a lot, but will take a lot to come out on top in this gauntlet of a division. I think that is a very honest answer they gave. And they're right. There are multiple things here. It's not the kind of team where you can say, if they stay healthy, they can win the division. There's more to it than that. And I think they hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I'm taking the under as well, but I want to give some credit to the front office because they've definitely taken their slings and arrows of how this team's been constructed and what they did in this offseason, but you can't say they haven't been aggressive. Their roster construction shows heavy intent to open this window and keep it open. You look at the homegrown talent, there's 13 players. They've acquired 24 players on this roster via trade or free agency. So they're trying their best to bring a contender and have it here. And I think they look at last year as an outlier and they feel like they're more of the team that they were the year prior. That is just starting this window of being competitive. And it really boils down to, like you mentioned, the pitching, but what else are you going to get from Jackson Holliday? Is he going to be the guy that eventually is a superstar player? Things that you were throwing huge praise towards his way on the buildup towards getting here. Well, now it's time to do it. Baltimore has to be able to fill that ballpark and make Camden feel alive again. Because last year, it was kind of sad to see, even as a Yankee fan, we thought they took a jump to being a perennial contender. And last year, they just took a huge fall from grace.
Yeah, I mean, they no doubt they have tons of talent. Almost as much talent as anybody in the league. It's just some of it has not reached the potential yet. It's really about does this all come together? They have an incredible amount of talent. Can it all come together? But I know we're gonna pivot here to our next team. Are we going to Boston or are we going to Tampa, Steve?
Let's go to Boston, and they're entering a season that is kind of reshaping their identity. I really like what they've done here, and they're no longer just built around slugging and star power. Think of the Red Sox of the past. This is a roster that's constructing, which is certainly leaning into some pitching depth, a lot of defensive reliability, and we got a wave of young position players beginning to arrive. Of course, we saw one of them on display with Roman Anthony in the WBC. He feels like he's on the verge of becoming one of the faces of baseball. But let's talk about the rotation because they had to be retooled after their 2025. They finished 12th in ERA last year, and they struggled to limit a lot of the traffic on the bases. You mentioned the addition of Ranger Suarez, but Sonny Gray, Yohan Oviedo, they're going to give the Red Sox a little bit more stability going into the year. And again, Garrett Crochet is another year wiser. He has the look, as we saw last year, finishing runner-up in the AL Cy Young race. He's a true frontline ace. This guy is just elite. There's no other way to say it. He's an absolute horse on that mound. And when you bring in Suarez and Gray, again, some reliability, some innings, I think for Ranger, we saw what he did in Philly. Can he pitch that ballpark? I understand Citizens Bank is a hitters-friendly ballpark. Fenway plays that way as well. It's going to be interesting to see how he does that. And looking at the bullpen, they finished second in bullpen ERA last year, first in home runs allowed per 9 innings, and that unit kind of stays intact. Aroldis Chapman, can they get the same Aroldis Chapman they got last year? Garrett Whitlock, we saw him in the WBC. I know he gave up that hit in kind of the clinching hit, but again, he was great throughout the WBC. Can he carry it over? And you have other names in there in high leverage situations, so that's definitely not a weak point. And for them defensively, that's what I was talking about before. This is not just built on offense heavy. They really fine-tuned the inner workings of this team. Ceddanne Rafaela, I understand that the bat needs to catch up with the glove, but he's certainly a guy in center field that's going to make the plays. Marcelo Meyer is another guy you're looking at. I know he doesn't get the same praise that Roman gets, but part of the big three, Campbell, Meyer, and Anthony, was always the talk of when they're going to arrive. And it seems like they're kind of going in different directions at different paces, but it still feels very much like they're a young core that they're planning to build around. And it feels like they're going to make the plays. What we were talking about before with some of the other teams that are not making the plays, the Boston Red Sox are not going to beat themselves in the field by making errors. That's for sure. And then offensively, my biggest thing for them is Roman Anthony, and he headlines this way for them. We talked about the World Baseball Classic, but we also talk about Jarren Duran and Willie Abreu having great World Baseball Classics as well. The Red Sox had a lot of shining stars during this tournament, and it's not really a lineup that's going to just overwhelm you with power. They're built way different than the Yankees, which I think that does play in their favor. I'm not saying they're not slump proof, but I think that there is a place in baseball where they're having a way to beat you in different ways on different nights. I do believe that this team has the ability to take the next step. They were productive last year offensively. There was a lot of bright spots fantasy baseball wise. You could look at some of these names that helped take the step. I think the trend is expected to continue. I think looking at the way this team is built around contact, I really like the way this team has constructed this lineup. But the health is a concern as well. I mean, copy paste what we said about other players, other teams. Tanner Houck is working his way back from Tommy John surgery on the pitching side of things. Cutter Crawford and Patrick Sandoval are going to be returning from significant injuries as well. So their rotation's depth is a little bit vulnerable if you get one of these other bigger guys at the top end getting hurt. God forbid a Garrett Crochet guy gets hurt as well. But I also think the sustainability. Last year, they used 13 different starters. And I don't know if you can do that as far as throughout the year on a 162 game season of, can they not do that? Because I think that's a sign of a team that they're a little bit in flux. I know that's in vogue for baseball now where you're using all the starters, but it's interesting. I think this is going to remain a pressure point. And to pass it to you, my X factor is Roman Anthony. I think no player will shape Boston's ceiling further than him. This guy has the utmost potential to be a superstar, and I don't say that lightly.
Yeah, that's my guy. I love Roman Anthony. But listen, I think you and I see this team differently. I see it. There are plenty of things to like. I love the pitching staff, and I actually love the pitching depth. You just mentioned those guys that could return and help at some point, Sandoval and Cutter Crawford and Tanner Houck. Their rotation right now on roster resource, Crochet, obviously, Sonny Gray, Ranger Suarez, to me, a great signing. Like you may raise a good point. Let's see how he adjusts to Fenway. It's a very unique place to pitch. Brian Bayo, who I think I'm more of a fan of than a lot of people. I see a lot of people trash him. I don't know. I feel like he's mostly pretty solid. And Oviedo, who you mentioned, who's had a good spring, looks like he's the front runner for the 5 spot. But there's 2 other guys, the youth, man, Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley are legitimate guys to watch. And we got a look at both of those guys late in the season last year. Connolly Early ends up being forced into that game 3 against the Yankees when they thought it was going to be Lucas Giolito, who ends up having some kind of injury. Held his own for a little while. I think it was him against Schlittler, like the young guns going against each other. And Schlittler was able to last longer than Early was. But Early, I believe, has added some weight, some muscle. He looks like the real deal. And Peyton Tolley, I think, looks better too. He was all fastball last year. If you look at it, he's a little more of a pitch mix. I love the rotation, man. I love the vets in there. I really believe in those 2 the younger guys. And I kind of forgot of those other guys you just named that are on the comeback trail that could also help. So you're looking at a lot of professional pitchers there. And the top of the rotation is fantastic. My worry for Boston is I don't think the offense can hang with the likes of the Blue Jays, Yankees, and Orioles offense. So the pitching is going to have a heavy load to bear in my mind. Don't get me wrong. Like, I like some of these players on offense, and I know they're built differently. Roman Anthony, Trevor Story, when he's out there, is still solid. Duran has looked good in the WBC and spring. Maybe he, had a little bit of a down year last year. Maybe he comes back to that form that we saw in 2024. Wilson Contreras, it was a solid signing. He's going to be solid for you there. We'll see if Tristan Casas can get back, because I feel like what they lack is that really big pop bat. Roman Anthony, as much as I love him, I don't think he's ready to carry an offense yet. I don't see him as that guy who can just put it on their back. Like, he's not an Aaron Judge. He's not a Shohei Ohtani yet. Maybe one day he's not a Juan Soto, but he might head in that direction. I think if you compare him to anyone, maybe like a Juan Soto, maybe that's his profile. But I don't think he can do that yet. So I worry about the offense. I love the pitching. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this Red Sox team is going to be how they play at home as well. I think they need to use it as an advantage. And I think the way they built the team, mentioned contact first, building around this. And Jarren Duran is an X factor as well. I don't think he's my X factor, but he's someone that everyone was in love with the year prior, and then he was on the tip of
Mhm.
everyone's tongue as far as being a trade candidate for the Red Sox to move on from. And it feels like he took that personally. In this Mexico showcase that he had in the WBC, it feels like he's at the point where he has something to prove this year, and that's a dangerous thing for a player as explosive as he can be, as we saw just a year prior.
No doubt, no doubt. X Factor, yeah, I didn't go through for an X Factor, but I honestly I wouldn't hesitate taking him. The over under set at 87.5. In my opinion, that's high. I would take the under. I like, without blinking, I would take the under on that.
Yeah, I think that that is a everything has to break right kind of thing for them for that to happen. I'm going to go under, but just a smidge. I do love what the Red Sox have done. I do believe their offense is going to take the next step. And I do believe by the time we're sitting here this time next year that Roman Anthony is a crown jewel member of that. Like, he's the superstar. I think we're going to be having that conversation that he's going to be, if all things are accounting, I think he could be in the MVP conversation. That's how high I am of this bat, especially playing in that ballpark. He plays with a different confidence. I know that Team USA didn't play offensively up to par that everyone was expecting, but he has a swagger about him, like he's meant to be there. And I'm curious how that plays out. And Boston's just going to fall in love with him.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love him as well, and I really do hope he has that unbelievable season. Again, fantasy owner of Roman, so that's another thing that I like about him. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The AL East is really tricky, and I think almost I'm just seeing. It might not be fair of me to say, oh, like their offense is built differently, doesn't have as much power as those other three teams I mentioned. Maybe they can win other ways. Obviously, pitching, putting the ball in play, defense, like you mentioned. Again, another product I think I just have to see on the field before I can really get a feel for it.
So let's move over to the Toronto Blue Jays. I know you have them on here. They are the reigning AL champions. They have a lot to prove this year, trying to build on it. And they were aggressive this offseason, reshaping, trying to put the finishing touches on what was almost a World Series championship.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I like this team very, very much, as most people do. I just think I might have more concerns than most people do. I feel like there's so many people just assuming that the Blue Jays are again going to be the class of the AL because they played so well last year. I remember they and the Yankees virtual tie for the AL East division, and the tiebreaker goes to the Blue Jays. And just a year before, the Blue Jays were a huge disappointment with like a pretty similar roster, if we're being honest. So year to year, I don't know, climbing that mountain to get back to the World Series is a long way, man. Bumps and bruises, like things are going to happen. So the first thing that sticks out to me is George Springer played unbelievable last year, like turned the clock back like 7 years. The first thing that stands out to me is he was such a huge part of their road to the postseason. I'm very skeptical if he's going to do anything close to that again at age 36. I don't know. Like, one thing I wanted to mention, actually, this is Roman Anthony stuff, and it's popped in my head because George Springer over his career has had so many injuries that have brought him in and out of the lineup. Just to go back to Roman really quickly, one thing as a concern, when he missed the end of the year last year, it was largely because of back issues. I hate back issues, are always a red flag to me. I hope that's a one-time thing and not something that comes back every once in a while. But the Springer stuff back to the Blue Jays would be the first thing I'm skeptical about. The second thing, I love the addition of Okamoto, but there are no guarantees with a player coming over from NPB. 99% of me thinks he's going to do really, really well, but you got to see it first. It's another unknown to a degree. The lineup 1 to 9, very, very solid. I do feel like, listen, you lose Bo Bichette, and I think there were some people that thought Kyle Tucker was going to come over. That didn't happen. So offensively, like, there are some, not holes, but there's some guys you're going to need to step up in my mind. If George Springer doesn't have as good of a year, Bo Bichette's gone. You didn't get Kyle Tucker. Addison Barger, or this guy here, I have his card right near me, Dalton Varsho, right? That's a pretty looking card. Nothing special, not worth anything, but it's pretty. I think one of those two guys, and maybe both of them, need a breakout. We've seen signs from both. We've seen flashes from both. Varsho has been one of the best hitters in spring training, hitting .432, 4 home runs, 5 doubles, 1 triple. He's been tearing it up, dude. Like, we've always known this guy has really, really good potential, and just, I don't know if he's fully ever put it together. It's a really solid player, but that one just bell to bell, really, really great year. Like Varsho a lot. Addison Barger, man, I'm going to talk a little bit about him at the end, so I'll save it. But I was not a fan of the Jesus Sanchez acquisition. I'm not sure what they see there, but I am completely willing to let David Popkins cook and see if he can put his magic dust on Jesus Sanchez there and see what he adds to this squad. Another piece offensively, and I think some people might not even realize he's there. Eloy Jimenez, yes, still plays baseball. Hitting 297, couple of bombs in spring training. The swing has looked good. One time, very, very high prospect with enormous power, and we've seen flashes of it. Wonder if he ever gets a shot with the big league club if they're looking for that pop and he's tearing it up. I don't know what that situation will be. But again, David Popkins, we can say that name again. Before I get to the pitching side, your thoughts on the offense coming into this year without Bo Bichette, without being able to go get Kyle Tucker, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I love the offense. Everything centers around Vlad Jr. I think he's a guy, again, that has to do what he did again this year. The projections look like everyone believes he will be. I also love Alejandro Kirk. I think he's another player that gets underrated in the circles of baseball. He does provide a lot of elite contact on base ability. Honestly, he became just a huge threat to me in the postseason watching him do what he does. And I think, the Okamoto thing's well taken. Adding some power and run production. Can he transfer that over to Major League Baseball? We'll watch him and Murakami very closely this year. And I like the defense side of things. I know you touched on a lot of those guys. We talked about all the metrics from last year and most of these guys here, and Bo Bichette exits and he's not known for his defense. This is a Toronto ranked first in multiple defensive metrics, and they're only going to get better in my opinion. So that defensive value plays very large in 2026 baseball. I think a lot of people love the home runs because they're sexy. But as I mentioned with the Red Sox, and I'm mentioning with some of these other teams, defense looms very large if you can get the outs. And we're not looking at a rotation that is built on these frontline big starters like we're looking at with the Garrett Crochets or the Tarek Skubals. They certainly have to make the plays if they get the ground balls or if the ball is hit and able to be caught. And I guess I'll transfer that over to you. Does this improve Dylan Cease while he's there? Is he better because Toronto's defense is better than San Diego's?
That's a great question, man. Dylan Cease is a bit of a mystery, and we know he can strike out the world, but he leaves you scratching your head sometimes. I mean, pitching-wise, it's a little bit of a revamped group. Jose Barrios is like the forgotten man there, wasn't part of the World Series run, but he looks okay in spring so far. I think a lot of people thought he might have been shipped off in the offseason. He's not. He's still there. Cody Ponce brought over, right, from being absolutely dominant overseas. He's only thrown 8 innings in spring so far, 1.13 ERA, though, so that looks good. Everyone's saying he's a completely different pitcher than his first time around in the majors. Kevin Gausman and Dylan Cease at the top of the rotation. Again, these two have barely pitched in the spring. Kind of, I guess, slow playing them a little bit. But they look good. They've looked good in the small samples we've seen them. I don't know with Cease, man. That signing definitely caught me off guard. The big years, the big AAV, and not some people would say not enough that he's shown to get it. But again, that potential super, super high. I like your point. Your point about the defense is a good one. They were elite in that department last year and putting ball in play. Like that's the style of baseball they played to get to where they got to, and which was within inches of winning a World Series. So, I mean, if Cease is the good version of Dylan Cease, maybe he is that every other year guy, man, the Blue Jays are completely in business of winning this division again. I will remain skeptical about Cease. Obviously, it will be really fun to watch Trey Savage for a full season. We got a little bit of him there at the end of the season in the playoffs. You got to remember, this dude pitched at 5 different levels last year. So, like, how does he fare with the grind of a full MLB season? And do they cut down his workload? Like, how are they going to manage it? Just like you mentioned in the NL East episode about, I believe it was maybe Nolan McLean or one of the other young
Cam
guys.
Schlittler, I said. Cam
Schlittler in this episode, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so any of these young guys who are kind of entering their first full major league season, like, how does the team approach that? Big fan of the bullpen. Big fan of the bullpen, which there's probably not a lot of teams we've said that for in these division previews. Usually the bullpen is very easy to be skeptical about for a lot of teams. The Tyler Rogers ad, I think, is big. Jeff Hoffman's not my favorite player, not my favorite pitcher. Hasn't pitched much, but he has looked good when he has in spring. You hope there's no hangover effect from the World Series and kind of the moments he had that weren't great there in big moments. But overall, when you look at the bullpen as a whole, I do like it as a strength.
I do think for the pitching side of things, and we've mentioned this greatly with depth playing a part here for other teams in this division alone. Jose Barrios with the elbow thing you're mentioning, Shane Bieber with the forearm thing, Bowden Francis with Tommy John. They're all going to be on the shelf for whatever period of time. So if any additional issues arise, if any of these guys get hurt, and again, you're relying on a guy like Max Scherzer now in his 40s who's there. I understand he's not going to be top of the rotation, but you need meaningful innings from him. And I don't know. That to me, I look, and then Dylan Cease is another guy, the big question mark. I think everyone loves what you saw in Chicago and then early parts of the San Diego run, but is he a difference maker? And I don't know. I mean, I think that's what you need from him. And for them, it's about getting better, and getting better means winning the World Series. And that's a really tough hill to climb, as you said, to go back there after losing, carry the bag up the hill type of thing. This is a very competitive AL East that certainly, if they get out of it, they're just as much of a chance as anybody to get there. The other thing I'd like to see them improve, and we'll see if it happens this year, is despite them doing all things well, like the lack of speed was interesting from them because they were ranking near the bottom of the league in stolen bases, which was interesting because if you think about this team, they're very versatile. It feels like they're a team that kind of puts a lot of pressure everywhere. And the fact that they weren't stealing bases was an interesting thing about this team that I probably wouldn't have guessed off the bat without looking it up.
Yeah, because you kind of feel like teams that are built like good defense, putting the ball in play, you also sometimes assume they're also going to play with speed. And it's a fair point. The Dylan Cease stuff. Listen, if he's the 5 and fly guy that frustrated San Diego fans, the 5 and fly guy that sometimes strikes out 10 and sometimes gets absolutely shelled, Blue Jays are in a little bit of trouble. Like that's going to be really frustrating, really quick, and in a division loaded with great hitters. So I got to see it first if Cease can do that. Again, this might be a good place to go. For them to get the best out of them. I do believe they might be able to do that, but you got to see it first. The over-under is set at 88.5. I will go over. I don't think I'm going way, way over. Like, I don't think this is a 100-win team. I don't think they're that level. I don't think this is a 98-win team. I think they might be low 90s, maybe even just above 88.5 at 89. That wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. So I think they're right around that low 90s mark. My X factor is the previously mentioned Addison Barger. And I'm basically looking like, can he become an all-star caliber player? I think we've seen flashes of it. I love the swing. I love the pop. 107 WRC plus during the regular season. 21 home runs last year in the regular season, 74 RBIs. In the postseason is really where I felt like I was watching a future star. Hit 367, 188 WRC plus, 3 home runs and 9 RBIs in the postseason. Looked the part. Was not phased by the big moments. So really, really liked what I saw out of Addison Barger. He is my X factor, especially with the departure of a Bo Bichette.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the over as well on this team. I guess the real conversation will be sometime middle of the year. Do we feel like they got better? And I don't know if you can answer that right now. I really don't feel like you can answer that fairly right now because of the momentum they saw, but they're different. As we mentioned with some of these other teams, they feel different. I think Bo Bichette was a big part of what they do. And we'll see exactly how they adapt and redefine their identity. Because again, Bo Bichette was synonymous with the Blue Jays in their offense for a very long time, and he's no longer here. But let's move over to the Tampa Bay Rays, returning home to Tropicana Field. Looking good over there. The pictures look good in Trop, and shout out to everyone that made that happen with all the damage that was there to get this ready for opening 2026. Well done. But they enter this season as a team that's kind of familiar to us. Creative roster construction, matchup flexibility. And as we know, they always do this, squeezing value out of every spot on their roster. And they stop me if you've heard this one before. They're pesky. They're annoying. They may not be a true contender, but they're going to play like it on some nights. And I look at the offensive competence at the top. You look at Yandy Diaz, you look at Jonathan Aranda. Both those guys are really like setting the tone when they're playing right. But I think the one player that can actually change the tone of this offense in a meaningful way, it's Junior Caminero. He's the closest thing they have to an impact bat. You look at his projections, 4.6 WAR, 128 WRC plus. Watch the momentum from spring training into the WBC. if there's a path for this lineup overperforming and surprising some people, it runs through him. There's no doubt about it. And you look at some of the Rays functionality on display, taking players that maybe you feel like you wouldn't want on your team, but they're going to get the best out of them. Cedric Mullins playing center field, brings some valuable experience, Campbell alum. Gavin Lux adding some versatility and some on-base skills. Chandler Simpson, he might be a fantasy darling in some roto leagues, bringing some elite speed to this lineup. And they finished first in stolen bases, by the way, last year. So let's remember that as well. That's also a big part to who they trade away to the Yankees in the middle of the season. But it allows them to manufacture runs when the offense stalls. And there will be nights that happens because you said there's a lot of holes in this lineup that people can target. Yeah. On the pitching side, they do what they've always done. They piece together some usable innings among multiple arms. Drew Rasmussen is going to get the opening day nod, it seems. Ryan Pepiot, strikeout ability. Shane McClanahan, that's another big conversation. He's set for his debut on March 31st. So there's going to be workload management for him, but we'll see if he can take the next step. He's a guy, we talked about Shane Baz being in the Orioles system. There's high hopes for McClanahan to be this frontline ace, but you have Nick Martinez. Not sure if you saw Steven Matz is over there being there. They're going to try to squeeze some stuff. Would it shock you if Steven Matz actually did something meaningful for the Tampa Bay Rays at some point this year? I think the weakness comes into view. I mean, last year, if you watch the Rays, even though they played in that ballpark that was offense heavy, they were a bottom half lineup in terms of impact. They finished 19 in on base, 14th in OPS, 15th in runs scored, and 16 in home runs. And considering, again, where they played their home games, they're probably a lot worse than that. I think that the Steinbrenner Field probably added some marks for them. But when you add Cameron in the fold, and I mentioned him taking the next step, being this superstar player, I guess what I was saying about Roman Anthony, if Cameron can do that as well, I don't even know if this team still has enough thump. I mean, he can go out there and have a historic season. I still feel like they would need way more from this lineup that it doesn't exist. They're going to have stretches where scoring is going to be very hard. It's going to look like a grind for them. And against the high-end pitching, we mentioned some of the arms in this division. It's going to be a significant issue for them to compete. But again, you can't ever write them off completely. The rotation, in a lot of ways, and some nights may look solid on paper, but there's the durability concerns. McClanahan can be managed carefully, but I'll pass it to you from there. Like, do you feel like they could do the things that they need to do to be the Tampa Bay Rays and potentially have a path to win the AL East in some outlier season, or is this just not in the cards this year?
No, I know you said you can't write them off. I'm writing them off this year. I'm not saying there's nothing to like about them, but this is not the division they can win. Maybe put them somewhere else and they can kind of make noise. I don't think this is the division they can win. Maybe they will make me eat crow here like the Brewers did last year, like one of those teams that just kind of always knows how to get it done. I just don't see it. I mean, you let some guys walk out the door. Brandon Lau no longer there, part of the fabric. Josh Lowe sent off. I feel like some guys that have been big clubhouse guys too and big presences are not there anymore. I mean, this is Junior Camanero's team now. Very quickly before I forget our guy Chase Selesky, former guest, great guy, was part of the Nationals, pitched for them in AAA last year, but he is now in AAA, we think, for the Rays, and he was a non-roster invitee to the big league spring training. 10.29 K per nine so far in 7 innings. Some strong strikeout numbers there. 3.86 ERA. So maybe we'll see Chase up with the big league Rays at some point. That'd be really cool. Rooting for that. But just the roster, looking at it, listen, there is some help on the way. A little disappointing that Carson Williams was not able to make the team. We know he's got a great glove. I think the hit tool is still a question. Strikeout numbers are concerning. But he's been such a big prospect for them for a long time. They need that dude to turn out, and they need him to get there. But he'll start the year in AAA. Jacob Melton, who they acquired, I think people are very excited about. I think that was a good acquisition. I don't think he's starting with the big league club either, but maybe they get him up there at some point. So there's some help on the way for sure, as there always seems to be for the Rays. Seems to be a bigger deal who they have on the farm than anything else. But yeah, the big league club, like you kind of said, I just think there's too many holes in the lineup. I mean, the top is great. Yandy, Aranda, Caminero. And then we're looking at Cedric Mullins, Jake Fraley, Gavin Lux, Taylor Walls, Chandler Simpson, who I know can steal a billion bases, but Nick Fortes. I don't think they can compete in that division with that offense. I just don't see it in any way, shape, or form. And like the Red Sox can only almost convince me, even though I don't think their offense is as good as the other 3 teams, because they have such great pitching in my mind. I love the pitching staff. But the Rays, as much as I like Drew Rasmussen, and I actually like Ryan Pepio a lot, and I love Shane McClanahan, and I'm very, very, very much rooting for him to have a fully healthy season. Like, I think we all want that as baseball fans. I'm not seeing it, man. Like, Nick Martinez is fine. He's done some good things over the last couple of years. Steven Matz, like you said, they're trying to squeeze the last few drops out of him. And they got Ian Seymour waiting in the wings too. So if the Matz thing doesn't work out, he could maybe take over there. But I'm not. I'm out on the Rays this year, to be completely honest. I that might be a little strong, but that's how I feel with the Rays.
I mean, also too, the identity of this team from years, where you think of them, they do things right, they play the right baseball. Last year, the defense wasn't good at all. You can account for them not playing in their home ballpark, whatever it was. But I do believe there's a meaningful shift from what used to be, in my opinion, defining organizational strength on their end. And to me, again, you look at this lineup and you look at this rotation, there's no true ace capable of delivering 180 or more high-end innings. If you get ace-like behavior from a guy like Shane McClanahan, he's not pitching 180 innings.
Right.
I mean, there's no way we're getting that kind of depth from them. So the bullpen's interesting for me. Again, they're not this like lockdown unit, but I do believe
I like the bullpen.
Yeah, last year they had some good spots where, I mean, there is the loss of Pete Fairbanks, as we discussed in the NL East episode, and they're not the same group that they were last year, but they showed some bright spots. They were able to compete. I don't know. There's some uncertainty. You mentioned some of the names in this lineup. They're sorting through some outfield roles as well as we speak. So this is not like the lineup is set as of right now, or could be set for what this lineup looks like in 3 months, because you mentioned Simpson, Frawley, DeLuca, Melton. I mean, Carson Williams is not yet ready for a full-time role at the major league level. We're going to get some platoons out there as well. So the flexibility does help, and it does feel like the Rays are being the Rays, but it's going to produce some inconsistency, and it's going to cost the team in the long run as far as wins go. But Junior Caminero is the X factor, and I think watching him develop into a legitimate star, they may punch above their weight on any given night because he's in the lineup. And if he does settle into just simply being a good player, or maybe regresses, unfortunately, this lineup is not going to carry enough impact to be one of the better offenses in the league, and they may be the bottom half. They're going to go with Junior Caminero, and if they want to win games, it's going to be on his back, in my opinion.
Yeah, their over-under mark is tricky. 77.5. Again, partly because of the division and the war, the gauntlet that division is. I lean towards the under, even for 77.5, which is not a big number, just slightly under. Pacoda, who you can look at their rankings and they kind of simulate. They have Tampa at the bottom of the division, but they do have them winning 81 games. In fact, Pacoda agrees with us that this division is tough to predict. They have all 5 teams in the 80s of wins. So, like, they feel like these 5 teams are going to battle out, hover around 500, beat each other up, and someone will come out on top. I mean, Pacoda has Toronto barely coming on top of the Yankees, and then Baltimore, and then Boston, and Tampa, with Tampa winning 81. So interesting, but I don't know. I lean towards taking the under on the 77.5 number.
Yeah, I think for the Rays, it's a big conversation about what the identity of this team is going to be. There's going to be a lot of good grace for returning to your ballpark. There's something about that, being able to bring your fans back to the Trop. So that's going to have a little bit of buzz carrying through. And I don't know, they're a team that, for me, I know you're going to write them off, but they're at any point, they're just pesky. And I think they're going to be really annoying to play. They'll be competitive on some nights, but they're not winning the division. I don't think we're diluting ourselves believing that, but they're going to be in a pain in the ass. And if you close your eyes and think of the Yankees and the Rays playing each other, it would not shock me if the Rays took the season series. That's how shit like this works out, because the Yankees play down to their opponents sometimes. And I feel like the Rays are going to be a thorn in their side all year.
Yeah, I feel like AL East fans, like if you're a fan of the Yankees or Boston or Baltimore, you see the Rays the way, kind of, it's not exactly the same, but you see the Rays the way we NL East people kind of see the Marlins. As like, they're not supposed to be this good, but they're so annoying to play, and they beat us at inopportune times and things like that. With that being said, it sounds like we're both out on the Rays as far as postseason teams, but let's look at our predictions here. I had AL, as far as the AL, if you listen to our other episodes, I had one team coming out of the West, and that was the Seattle Mariners. I had 2 teams coming out of the Central, and that was the Tigers and the Royals. So I have 3 spots here, 3 teams coming out of the East. I do have the Yankees winning the division this year. I feel pretty confident in it. I mean, not a guarantee it's a really good division, but I feel strongly about that pick. I have the Blue Jays coming in second. I do think it'll be a battle between them for a while. The Orioles, if you listen to this whole episode, you might be confused because I have them finishing third and making the playoffs. Yes, I did take the under on their number. I think almost Red style, they will squeak in just barely with enough wins, kind of maybe an 83 total. I think they'll edge out teams like the Guardians, teams like the Red Sox, really close. I think we'll get a really fun wild card battle with a few AL teams toward the end of the year, last month of the season. But I have Yankees, Blue Jays, Orioles. They all make the playoffs. Red Sox just barely miss. Rays miss by a significant amount.
So I'm kind of with you for most of it. The Yanks winning the AL East, the Blue Jays finishing second, the Red Sox third, the Orioles finishing fourth, and the Rays finishing dead last. But I have the 3 playoff teams coming out as well. Same playoff teams we got last year, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox returning to the postseason. It's tough, man. But if you flip this on its head, I would be surprised for the Rays. But for Baltimore, if they were to bounce back and Pete Alonso was the difference maker and Trevor Rogers pitches like an ace, you could convince me that they can climb the rankings. And like you said, be in the postseason. It wouldn't shock me to see them hosting a playoff game this year. I just think the Rays are clearly the worst team in this division, and they're going to squeeze out some wins. And in any other division, maybe they have a shot at winning it. Like you put them in the NL Central, maybe they have a shot to compete. But this is a gauntlet, and I think they're going to take a lot of losses in all these head-to-head matches with some really tough teams here.
Yeah, I'm excited now. Now that we've gone through each division and we've kind of chosen our playoff teams, it's perfect timing. It's March Madness. We've been filling out basketball brackets. Now we get to put our MLB preseason prediction postseason bracket together. It'll be fun to see each of ours and how they compare. Last year, I believe I ended up having my World Series prediction preseason was Red Sox defeating the Diamondbacks to win it all. That did not turn out. I mean, Boston did make the playoffs, so I was right on that. I also had the Blue Jays in the playoffs in my preseason predictions, and not many people did. I don't think I had them going that far, but I'll put a feather in my cap for that one because they were bad the season before. So I saw a little bit of that coming. Maybe not the World Series Game 7 stuff, but so we'll see if my predictions are a little better this year. Who'd you have last year? I feel like you had the Diamondbacks in there too. We were high on the Diamondbacks.
I had the Texas Rangers as well. With
the 2023 rematch. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't work out well for me, but I didn't know that Globe Life was going to play very poorly, reducing runs, but we'll see. So we'll see what we predict for our World Series this year. If we could be more accurate, maybe even more accurate than our free agent draft was, because we were certainly not
very hard.
There.
That's not very hard to be better than that.
But as Devin mentioned, we'll be back soon with that episode. So stay tuned to social media for all that. I know I've been dropping a lot of content. As I mentioned before, we're not going to keep up the pace we did with the WBC going on. That's a once every 3 year type of thing. We're going to be returning to our normal schedule of dropping episodes maybe once or twice a week. I'll get into a rhythm with season starting, and we'll give you guys a direct reaction to a large slew of games. We'll preview opening day and all that on that episode where we're doing the predictions. We'll give you guys a little blurb, but we're going to fall into a rhythm. This is a marathon. 162 game. If you guys are going to buckle up, we're not going to sit here and do post games like all these team specific podcasts do. We're going to give you guys the full coverage of everything you need to know about Major League Baseball and also college baseball and fantasy baseball, and keeping you guys in tune with every single thing you need to know.
No doubt, man. This is a fun part of the season. Like I said earlier, hope springs eternal. Like everyone has a reason to be, or should, I hope, has a reason to be optimistic about something. Maybe it's not believing your team's going to the postseason, but certain players to watch and be excited about in the future. And yeah, I love this time of year, man. Baseball's just about to get started. Let's get it going.
So make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and on X at TableSittersPod for all your baseball info. Devin running the X machine over there. Make sure you guys check us out on YouTube at Tablesitters Baseball. If you are so kind, please leave a 5-star review. It goes a very long way in the algorithm. We're going to hit the races, man. We're going to hit the sound of the gun, and we're off to the races on this marathon of a baseball season. It's all going to kick off on Netflix with the Yankees and the Giants, Luis Arraez and Aaron Judge and Tony Vitello and all the great stuff happening over there. But we'll be back soon, man. It's right around the corner. And until that time, we'll talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.